People say the truth will set you free, but sometimes the truth is the weapon that shatters the story someone tried to trap you in. The woman who disappeared from my life 4 years ago came back with a child, and a lie big enough to turn me into the villain of my own town. She wasn't ready for the one revenge I chose: silence. My name is Callum, and for most of my life Davenport Ridge was the kind of quiet mountain city where nothing unpredictable ever happened. Fog curled through the streets every morning. People kept to themselves and everything felt stable until I met Lyra Quinn. She was an illustrator for children's books, always carrying a tote bag full of brushes and half-finished sketches, and she had that soft, faraway look artists tend to have when their minds are full of stories. We met at a small outdoor art exhibit. She laughed at something I said about a crooked painting, and for a moment I felt like I'd stepped into a life better than my own. We moved in together after 2 years. Our apartment overlooked a line of old pines and always smelled faintly of acrylic paint. She hummed when she worked, filled the place with color, and her presence softened the sharp edges of my otherwise quiet life. I didn't think of it at the time, but the best days of a relationship always feel so natural that you don't imagine documenting them until they're gone. The distancing started subtly: late nights at her studio, short answers, cancelled plans. She stopped talking about her feelings, the thing she had always done instinctively, and instead retreated into herself like someone quietly preparing for a life raft only she knew about. One winter evening, I opened our closet and found a suitcase neatly packed. My heart tightened. She didn't deny it. She said she needed a few days to think, that it had nothing to do with me. But when someone says that, you already know the truth sits somewhere deeper. She left 2 days later, and she never came back. At first I tried everything, calling her family, her friends, the studio she worked in. No one knew where she'd gone, or they pretended not to. Within weeks, her social media vanished, her number disconnected. Emails bounced. It felt like she had peeled herself out of our shared life with surgical precision. Her belongings remained exactly where she left them: her coat on the chair, her favorite mug by the sink, her notebooks full of sketches. I walked through the apartment like someone haunting the ruins of their own home. I filed a missing person report. The police investigated just long enough to determine there was no evidence of foul play. In other words, she left because she wanted to. Rumors filled the silence that followed. People speculating she'd grown tired of me, that she'd found someone else, that I'd driven her away. Small cities are merciless with boredom. I boxed up her things, moved to a studio apartment closer to downtown, and rebuilt my life in small, repetitive ways: running at dawn, learning to cook, playing piano on Thursdays. I didn't heal so much as adapt. The absence just became part of the architecture inside me. By the 4th year, I'd accepted that Lyra had vanished into a version of life that didn't include me. Acceptance doesn't mean peace, it just means exhaustion. But all of that collapsed the evening I returned home from a long shift and found her standing in front of my door. She looked older, not in a bad way, just weathered by something she'd chosen not to share. And beside her stood a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with dark curls and steady eyes, hugging a fox plushie to her chest. The air left my lungs. Lyra stepped closer, as if expecting relief, joy, some kind of reunion. "Callum," she whispered, almost smiling, "I finally found you." She lifted the child gently. "This is Asta, my daughter." Then she said something that rearranged the entire world around us in a single breath. "Can you come back with us? Asta needs a family, and I need you." In the warm, fading light of Davenport Ridge, with a child watching me like she expected to recognize my face, I understood something instantly and painfully. Lyra hadn't come for closure. She'd come with a rewritten story, and she was expecting me to play along. I stood in the doorway with the strange sensation that the floor had tilted just slightly, throwing off the balance of everything I thought I understood. Lyra held Asta like a shield, and an apology all at once, her eyes shining with that soft, pleading familiarity she must have assumed still worked on me. It didn't. "Callum," she said, "I came back because you're the only person I trust. I didn't know where else to go." The words rolled out rehearsed, polished by 4 years of imagining this moment. but something inside me had hardened into a shape she didn't recognize. "Trust," I repeated. "You disappeared, Lyra, 4 years, without a word. Trust left with you." Asta clung to her leg, watching me with a mix of curiosity and fear, as if she sensed the sharpness in the air. Lyra swallowed. "I know I hurt you. But I had reasons, ones I couldn't explain then." "And now?" I asked. "Now you show up with a child and want me to what? Step into some life you built behind my back." Her jaw trembled. She didn't deny it, didn't offer a name for the child's father, didn't provide a timeline. She simply whispered, "Family isn't always about blood, Callum." That line snapped something in me. "Good," I said quietly, "because I'm not her father." She looked wounded, but I could see something calculating behind it. A tiny flick of awareness that she'd misjudged the script she expected me to follow. I stepped back and closed the door before she could say another word. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, my phone erupted with notifications. Davenport Ridge Community Group had lit up overnight with a post. A photo of Lyra standing outside my building crying, holding Asta. Caption: "This man abandoned his ex and their daughter. She came back begging for help. He slammed the door in their faces." The comments were a bonfire of judgment. "Deadbeat. Garbage human. How do you walk away from your own kid?" No one cared whether it was true. Lyra stayed silent, and in staying silent she let the lie breathe. People love a villain, especially one close enough to point at. My co-workers sent awkward texts. My supervisor called me into his office, and even some neighbors looked at me, with the tight-lipped resentment reserved for people who break unspoken moral codes. Lyra didn't correct any of it. She didn't defend me. She didn't send one message clarifying the truth. The narrative grew bigger than the actual people involved, and I saw exactly what she was doing. She wasn't malicious, not intentionally, but she had convinced herself that if the world believed I was Asta's father, I might eventually believe it too. That evening she finally emailed me, a frantic, meandering apology with no accountability. "I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I just wanted you to talk to me. I didn't think people would attack you." But the absence of a correction spoke louder than anything she said. A person who truly wants to protect you doesn't let you drown just to stay afloat themselves. I didn't reply. Silence was the only leverage I had left, even if it felt like holding my breath underwater. Then came the knock on my door, a heavy, authoritative pounding. When I opened it, I found Darren Quinn, Lyra's brother, built like the kind of man who believes conflict can be solved by standing too close. He shoved an envelope at my chest. "You need to sign this," he said, jaw clenched. "Lyra's done everything alone. Don't pretend you don't owe them anything." I stared at him. "I don't owe anyone a life they wrote without me." "Coward," he muttered, stalking off. Inside the envelope was a handwritten, voluntary support agreement. Not a legal document, just pressure disguised as responsibility. I folded it and set it aside. The rumors escalated for days, each one more grotesque than the last, painting me as someone unrecognizable. But I didn't speak. Not because I lacked a defense, but because I finally understood the power of withholding one. When a mob demands a reaction, silence becomes rebellion. And while everyone else desperately filled the air with accusations and assumptions, I quietly collected everything, every message, every screenshot, every lie. Not to weaponize, but to understand the full shape of the damage done. When Lyra finally emailed again, her tone had shifted. "If you're willing to hear the truth, I'll tell you everything." I still didn't reply. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I refused to let her dictate the timing anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to her. She was reacting to me. And that shift, quiet, subtle, profound, was the beginning of my retaliation. Not loud, not vengeful, simply controlled. Because sometimes the most powerful move is the one no one sees coming. I chose not to speak at all. People think silence is weakness, because they misunderstand what it actually is. Silence isn't surrender. Silence is strategy. Silence is the refusal to hand someone ammunition they can twist into another accusation. In the days following Darren's visit, Lyra's emails became shorter, her tone more strained, as if she could feel the weight of everything unraveling, but didn't know which thread to pull first. Meanwhile, Davenport Ridge had started losing interest in the deadbeat father narrative, not because they realized it was cruel or false, but because boredom always wins. Outrage in a small city burns bright and dies fast. The moment a local councilman was caught in a minor scandal, the attention shifted. My name appeared less in conversations. People stopped staring at me with open contempt. But none of that meant anything to me. Their attention was never my problem. Their ease in believing the worst of me was. On the 6th day, Lyra's mother called again. This time I answered on speaker, set the phone on my kitchen counter, and continued making tea while she hurled accusations. "You don't deserve forgiveness," she snapped. "Lyra trusted you. You abandoned her when she needed you." I stirred my tea. Quiet, steady. When she paused to breathe, I simply said, "Believe whatever feels easiest," and hung up. My silence wasn't just refusal. It was a boundary she couldn't manipulate. Later that evening, I finally replied to Lyra's latest email, but with a single sentence. "If you want me to hear you, tell the truth in full." No versions, no omissions. I didn't say please. I didn't offer hope. I didn't offer forgiveness. I just demanded truth, stripped bare and without performance. She read it within minutes. No reply came. The next morning, the truth arrived. A long, unpolished confession, trembling in tone. She had been pregnant before she disappeared. The father wasn't me. It was a brief affair with a client who vanished as soon as she told him. She panicked, felt unworthy of me, convinced herself leaving was mercy. She raised Asta alone. As Asta grew older and began asking about her father, she broke. She convinced herself that I, the stable, predictable, safe man I'd always been, could step into the role she needed filled. She let the rumors spread because stopping them meant admitting what she'd done. Her final line was a quiet, defeated confession. "I didn't come back to hurt you. I came back because I don't know how to be honest with anyone anymore." I didn't respond to her email directly. Instead, I printed it. 3 copies, one for myself, one for my workplace, where my reputation had already taken hits based on lies, and one for the Davenport Ridge community group. I didn't add commentary or explanation. I didn't point fingers. I simply posted the confession exactly as she wrote it. Because truth doesn't need embellishment when guilt is already woven into every line. The reaction was immediate, a tidal wave of regret, backpedaling, sudden moral clarity. The same people who condemned me now condemned her, desperate to rewrite their own reputations. But I didn't accept their apologies. I didn't respond at all. Just as Lyra had let me drown in silence, I let them drown in theirs. Later that afternoon, Lyra texted, "You didn't have to do that." But I did. Not to hurt her. Not to win, but because the truth belonged to me too, and I refused to let her hold it hostage any longer. Silence had protected me. Truth finished the job, and for the first time in years, the story no longer owned me. I owned it. Lyra said she wanted to talk. "One last conversation," she wrote. But I had no interest in revisiting the places where she'd left me bleeding years ago. Still, something inside me needed to see her, not for reconciliation, but for confirmation. Confirmation that I no longer felt anything that could be used against me. So when she texted, "I'm outside your building," I went downstairs. She stood by the bench near the entrance, Asta holding her hand, tracing nervous little circles on the ground with her shoe. Lyra looked smaller, fragile in a way she'd never allowed herself to look before. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She didn't plead. She simply nodded and sat down, leaving a respectful distance between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't awkward. It was honest, something we'd never shared before. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I know you didn't have to." "I didn't come for you," I answered. "I came for myself." She accepted that without protest. Asta climbed onto the bench beside her, stealing glances at me like she was trying to understand what role I played in a story she only heard fragments of. Lyra took a long breath. "You deserve the truth from the beginning," she said. "I thought disappearing would spare you. I thought coming back would fix things. I've been wrong every step of the way." I didn't speak. She continued, voice trembling but steady. "I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what I let happen to you, for the story I forced you into." She swallowed hard. "And I'm sorry for thinking love or guilt gave me the right to decide your role in Asta's life." "That's not love," I said. I know, she whispered. Asta tugged at her sleeve. Mama, who is he? Lyra's face broke. Not dramatically, quietly, devastatingly. A man Mama hurt, she said. A man Mama wishes she hadn't. Asta nodded, accepting this with the simple clarity only children have. Lyra stood. I won't bother you again, she said. I just needed you to know that I'm not hiding anymore. Not from the truth. Not from what I did. Good, I said. And it was. Not for her, but for me. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to. Something inside me had already let go long before she turned the corner with Asta in tow. When I returned to my apartment, I felt a stillness I hadn't known in years. Not happiness, not triumph. Just clarity. A clean sense of finality that no apology, no explanation, no dramatic reunion could provide. I put away the folder containing every piece of the story, her confession, Darren's envelope, the screenshots of rumors, and slid it into a drawer. Not to revisit, not to save for revenge, but as proof that I survived something designed to fracture me. Proof that I rebuilt myself without needing anyone to believe me first. I opened the window. Davenport Ridge's cold evening air swept in, crisp and sharp, carrying the scent of pine. For the first time in 4 years, I felt like the quiet belonged to me, not to the absence she left behind. A satisfying ending isn't victory. It isn't revenge. It's that moment when the story ends, and you walk out of it whole,